Welcome, everyone. This is a very important evening for us to learn all about what's happening in Tallahassee from Bob Schaeffer, board member, and has done a lot of research for us. Our son in Colorado has 6 rescue donkeys. This has a purpose, so just bear with me. And what I learned about donkeys is when they sense prey, or danger of any kind, they will stand with their backs to each other and each one face a different direction. And our son sent a picture of them out during a snowstorm, a blizzard. The 2 oldest ones were in the barn, but the other 4 were out there. Obviously, there was prey in the area, something they were afraid of. And that picture made me think of us. We are looking to Washington, D.C., sensing danger and wondering, is there something that's going to harm us? We're looking locally at our school board meetings or council meetings. We're looking across the Atlantic now. What harm is going on over there? And now tonight we're looking to Tallahassee. So Bob Schaeffer is sort of going to be our protection donkey, looking to Tallahassee for us and giving us warnings about what we need to be concerned. And I hope that after you hear him tonight, you will reach out to your representatives and your senators up in Tallahassee and let them know what you think about some of these bills, either for them or against them. And you can do that by emailing, by calling, or postcarding. We're having a postcarding on March the 8th here in Fort Myers from 2 to 4. If you want to join us, no matter where you are in the state, we learned yesterday there is going to be a way that you can do that, and Bob will be there. So if you're in Orlando and have a question and you're at your own postcarding event in Orlando on March the 8th from 2 to 4, let us know, and Jim can send you a link and we can see each other while we're postcarding together. And if you want any of our postcards, I don't know if you can, that's what they look like. And just let me know by tomorrow if you want some, and I'll put some in the mail to you. Thank you so much, Bob, for protecting us and looking to Tallahassee for us.
And I have the opportunity to introduce Bob to you, but let me just share a little bit about how we're going to work this evening. Your chat, your Q&A, you want to submit your questions through the chat to Bill Petrarca. And so he should be listed right there in your chat. Send your note to him. He has the host slot. He will be relaying those questions then to Bob after Bob's presentation. And we discovered last week that we had a little problem at the end. We think we figured out how to fix it at the very end for closing comments. But tonight is a special night, and just as Karen gave the analogy of the donkeys protecting and looking out for each other and watching for the prey, today is another day where democracy died a little bit more in darkness. When Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post basically told its editorial editor, you're either with us or you're against us. You might as well resign now. He did. The editorial editor did. Jeff Bezos didn't, maybe unfortunately, but the newspaper that many of us looked at because it said democracy dies in darkness died a little bit more again today. Our whole focus through Floridians for Democracy is to try to keep shedding some light where the darkness keeps folding in. And it is really easy to get extremely depressed with the speed of change and the speed of the opposition that is stealing freedoms from us every day under the guise of freedom, under the guise of democracy, and under the guise of liberty. Tonight, we have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about one of the states that we saw early on was the canary in the democracy coal mine, the state of Florida. so many bills have been passed, and so many more now are coming. You'd think like they got to run out of stuff, but there's more. And tonight we'll learn a little bit about kind of catching us up on what's happened the last couple of years, but an opportunity to understand what the upcoming legislative session may look like on proposed bills that will be in the session that will start the early part of March next week. So with that, Bob Schaeffer's background and information was provided to you. He's devoted his life to political consulting, to advising, to really working with many progressive organizations, but helping people figure out how to navigate the complex world of politics and policy making. We're honored to have Bob as one of the key members on the Floridians for Democracy Institute board, and the Institute is focused on education, and that's what we're here for tonight. So with that, we're going to put the spotlight on Bob, and he's going to present, and I think he's got, he has the capability now for sharing his slides as well. Thank you so much. Thanks for participating.
Well, good evening.
Hello.
Why do we not go into slideshow? Interesting. Well, we have to go this. I won't go into slideshow, which it did before. In any case, presume you all can see what my screen is allowing me to show. We're going to talk today a bit about the most recent threats to democratic rights across Florida. And want to thank you all for joining us this evening and preparing to take action to preserve your rights, my rights, and those of our friends and allies. We did a similar program last year and with a much smaller audience, and it had a great impact. Many people joined us subsequently for a postcarding event and brought pressure to bear on our elected representatives in a way that we believe significantly reduced the negative impacts of what went on in Tallahassee. It was a lousy session, which could have been much, much worse if we had not acted. And that's what we hope to do again today, is to prepare you to take action, to make change in a way that stops the worst of the worst and maybe even moves a little bit of the good. So we want to talk a little bit about history first, because the past is truly prelude when it comes to politics. And looking back over the last 4 years and the special sessions that already occurred during the first weeks of this year in Tallahassee, at some of the latest hits that were passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. And just,
hey, Bob,
yes.
we're only seeing a list of files. Is that what you wanted us to see?
No, it's, well, I could, no. All right.
We're seeing a list of
Try it
files.
again. I don't know why it did not show
Maybe
is on my screen. Let me try again.
Maybe it needs to open.
And come back here. Try one more time. Share PowerPoint. This may be a problem with the mode that you're in, because I've done this many times, and it's not showing for you. Huh.
All right. Bill, do you have the slides?
Yeah, Bill, and I gave slides too. Let me try this way. How's that?
A second. We don't see anything.
How's that now?
We don't see anything.
I think you're not letting me share, because I've hit my share button and it's.
There we go. Now it's coming.
Now you're seeing my slides.
Now we're seeing a Zoom window. But here's.
Okay, hang on. We'll try it again.
There we go. And
Now hit the slideshow button.
It won't do it. That's there's something about the way you have this set up. But in any case, can you see this in this mode?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try one more thing. There we go.
There
Okay.
it is. Now we see it. Now we see it.
Okay. So looking at the recent hits, what's come out of Tallahassee, passed by the legislature and signed by the governor in the last 4 years. New laws passed the Don't Say Gay bills that try to make invisible the LGBTQ community, the abortion ban after 6 weeks, which is now the law in Florida, encouraging parents to censor library books, even ones they had not read, ending background checks for gun purchases, stopping DEI practices in higher education in the state colleges and universities, punishing Disney for the company's free speech, creating more hurdles to vote by mail. The reason you have to go back every other year to get to enroll and vote by mail is because the legislature took away your right to sign up for a longer term because they don't want you voting. And most recently in the special session, helping Trump round up undocumented immigrants. Okay. Sorry. So why is this happening? It's a result of the political and ideological alignment in Tallahassee. Florida has endured 26 years of one-party trifecta rule in which the same ideological and partisan alignments have controlled the governor's office and both houses of the legislature for 26 years in a row. For now, for 2025, every state constitutional office is controlled by the one party, and the state Senate is currently 28 Republicans to 11 Democrats. The state House is 86 Republicans and 33 Democrats. Supermajorities, which allow the most radical part of the majority to have its way in many cases, unless there's strong pushback from constituents. So as a result of that alignment, the most dangerous 60 days of the year for Florida democracy begin next week. On Tuesday, March 4th, the 2025 regular session of the Florida State Legislature officially gets underway. Now, there have already been 3 special sessions of the legislature convened this year by Governor DeSantis, who is looking for a way to make himself appear to be politically relevant. And his call to those sessions outlined some of the worst ideas possible. The only ones they dealt with in the special sessions were those dealing with immigration, trying to out-Trump Trump. But many of the ideas he advanced during that, like restricting the rights of citizens of Florida to make constitutional amendments and otherwise, will be seen during the regular session that begins Tuesday. There's no adage. I've seen attributed to 2 different sources, Mark Twain and Judge Gideon Tucker, that no man's life, liberty, or property is safe while the legislature is in session. And though that, I think, was written before Florida was a state, it adeptly applies to the Florida situation. So what we're going to do this evening is look at some of the worst bill proposals from the Florida legislature supermajority, the worst of the worst. And my adage for this little segment is, so many outrages, so little time. But we're not going to just agonize. We're going to talk about what you can do. And as I said, last year, after a similar presentation, folk went out and pushed back at their legislators, and many of the worst ideas from that initial presentation did not become law because people let their elected officials know that they were opposed to those ideas. Didn't make perfection. It's not going to happen in Tallahassee as it's currently aligned, but we can stop the worst of the worst. So the session has gotten off to a slow start in terms of bills filing because of the disarray from the 3 special sessions and warfare between the House, Senate, and governor about who was in charge, which played out over the immigration bill, in which some powers were taken away from the governor and given to the Secretary of Agriculture as one of the newspapers described as a middle finger from the Republican majority to Governor DeSantis. But as with the convening of the legislature coming up now in 5 days, 6 days, we're seeing more bills filed. So in some cases, I don't have bill numbers because they haven't been officially filed yet, but we know what's coming. And many of these ideas are bad ideas that were shot down last year and are refiled. Some are new. And at the end, I'll even share with you a couple good bills that have been filed, probably not going to win, but worth pushing for to show what could be done. The first package of bad bills follow through on attempts to suppress democracy. Number one is Senate 396, which would restrict the eligibility to vote by mail to those who have, quote, legitimate excuses. And the only people who can have legitimate excuses, according to this proposal, are elderly, disabled, military, and out-of-state students. If for convenience, you choose not to go to the polls and exercise what has long been a right to vote by mail in Florida, this would bar that practice entirely. Fortunately, former Senate President Kathleen Passidomo from Naples, who is now the Senate Rules Chair, is a strong believer in vote by mail, always does it herself, and she shot this proposal down last year. And we hope to put enough pressure on her again in 2025 so that it dies a well-deserved death. Second bill, to allow somebody to vote, a new person to register to vote, would require review of citizenship documents during voter registration processes. How many of you can easily find documents that show your citizenship? Do you have birth certificates or passports at hand? If you do not, and many people, particularly those who've moved a number of times, don't have that documentation. Under this proposal, they would not be eligible to vote, even if they were fully enfranchised citizens of the United States. If they didn't have the relevant paperwork that needed, they would not be able to register. What's going on here is the ideological elites that control Tallahassee want to limit the number of people who can possibly vote against their policies. And they do so by erecting rule after rule and hurdle after hurdle to try to keep them out of the electorate. The Governor DeSantis, in his call for the special session, even went further, wanted to further hamstring voter initiatives, putting questions on the ballot, like the constitutional amendments for marijuana legalization or for reproductive rights or for the many other minimum wage and many other good things that have passed over the years, by not allowing you to sign on a street corner or at your door or at a meeting, but have to go to a supervisor of elections office where you sign on a specified form, to limit the collection period, etc. The goal is they understand that over the last 20 years, the major way non-right wingers have had an influence on policy change in Florida was through the constitutional amendment process, and they want to make it go away. They've already had some success. They raised the hurdle to pass constitutional amendments from 50% to 60%. That's the reason the reproductive rights abortion amendment did not pass this past year, is because the legislature had passed with a 50% majority an amendment that raised the hurdle to 60% for citizens to put questions on the ballot. And it takes roughly 1 million signatures now to get a question on the ballot. They want to make it even more difficult, and we're waiting to see what specific proposals are moved to do that dirty deeds. Even though the law is already among the most restrictive in the country on reproductive rights, the governor and his allies in the legislature want to go even further. These bills have been kicking around. One was just filed today, SB 1284, that was just newly numbered, which would allow survivors of abortion, those means presumably the parents or other relatives, to sue for damages in civil court for wrongful death of the unborn. And if that's not extreme enough, they want to go further. The 6-week ban is insufficient. There will likely be a bill that will ban all abortion after the moment of fertilization, with very few exceptions, to stop mail order sales of morning after pills, and to require parental opt-in for school sex education. Though 57% of Floridians who voted supported removing all these laws on the ballot, the fact that a majority of Floridians is opposed to such restrictions doesn't matter to the ideologues who can currently control Tallahassee. We need to persuade them that legislators who vote for this garbage will have to pay a price in terms of their constituents down the road. Another bad package of ideas. And what's remarkable is these proposals, the three proposals noted here, were filed during the week in which there was a commemoration of the murders at Parkland High School, which led to the passage of several of these proposals that they're trying to repeal now, and which were passed by a Republican legislature and signed by then Governor Scott. The second one is SB 94, which would lower the minimum age to purchase all weapons, including assault weapons, from 21 to 18. That was a Republican passed and signed legislation. Now they want to repeal it. The HB 31 would authorize open carry. That means anybody could have a gun anywhere at any time. And SB 814 would specifically allow people to have guns on campus, on college campuses. A truly insane idea if you remember the history of places like Virginia Tech. But again, there's a lot of base voter pandering here with some of the proposals. Some of these may not be seriously advanced in the legislature, but they're all bad ideas. And as we move forward and get to the point of our postcarding, we'll have a better sense of which of these proposals is moving forward and which need to be stopped by constituent pressure. The next package of bad ideas is to take the next step in making LGBTQ folk invisible. The radical right have concluded that beating up on transgender individuals is a very popular political task, and they want to go as far as they can into that, with gays and lesbian folk the next on their list. SB 100, co-filed as HB 75, would ban pride and other so-called political flags on public buildings. HB 731 would bar solicitation of grant funding that includes support for DEI programs of any sort using public funds. And as yet not filed but kicked around is a bill that would restrict contents of education about sexuality. And obviously what they would say that there is only Adam and Eve, and no other possibilities exist according to their Bible. And hopefully, from their perspective, Florida law. And you notice that all these sets of issues that the legislature is focusing on are not the issues that public opinion polling shows Floridians want them to work on. Time after time, polls have shown that the major issues in Florida are things like the cost of living, property taxes, home prices. In fact, these types of issues, even including immigration, are barely mentioned. None of them registered over 10% in public opinion polling as an issue of primary concern. But instead of trying to roll back insurance company profits or knock down utility rates or do something about the cost of housing, all of which would offend both their ideology and their campaign funders, they decide that what to do is to focus on beating up on poor and defenseless populations to advance their ideological agenda. And I bet, and again, another, they believe a popular enemy, them, is to drive immigrants further underground. In the special session, the legislature passed a ban on allowing Dreamers to qualify for state tuition rates in public colleges, SB 244 and HB 255 would go a step further by prohibiting public colleges and universities from accepting the application of an undocumented applicant, even if that family could pay full tuition. HB 245 would force local law enforcement agencies to cooperate with federal and state immigration enforcement, even if a local municipality had a different opinion about what to do. And HB 891 would add to driver's licenses an indication of immigration status using the scarlet letter NC to designate non-citizen. It's amazing how far they would go. And finally, the final package of bad ideas, I think nicely categorizing as rejecting science and history, but I think many people would just look at this stuff and call it just plain nuts. SB 56, which it's been filed, would, one of the right-wing tropes is that chemical vapor trails are being used to poison the populace and to mind bend them for certain purposes. You know, the white vapor trails that you see sometimes from jet planes. So the law would prohibit release of chemical or biological agents through jet plane vapor trails. I think I want to file a bill that would prohibit invisible purple dragons from assaulting people. It's the silliness of it. SB 1058, HB 549 would rename the stretch of US 41 between Tampa and Miami that many of us drive on and have long called the Tamiami Trail to the Gulf of America Trail. Look whose boots they are polishing with that kind of terminology. And finally, not filed here. It's been filed in Tennessee and several other states. And this is if you follow right-wing fantasies in social media, this would bar the distribution of what they refer to as vaccine lettuce. And the notion is that somehow those people, the people in charge, the invisible government, the secret state, is out there vaccinating the population by injecting chemicals into common consumer products that do not appear to be pharmaceutical in any way. So it would bar the distribution of any hidden drugs to protect us from them. So it's quite a package, and it's taken as a whole, it's very dangerous. It would be funny if it weren't deadly serious. So there are some good bills filed, about 1,000 bills total filed in the legislature this year. Two real good ones that many people are aligning by. HB 870, HB 741, the Healthcare Freedom Act would repeal the 6-week abortion ban and related restrictions on reproductive care. The Planned Parenthood and other reproductive rights activists are strongly behind that bill. Essentially, it would do what the 57% majority of Floridians wanted the state to do in voting on Amendment 4 back last November and repealing all the existing restrictions on abortion and going back essentially to Roe v. Wade. SB 880 would do the same. Is aimed at a different initiative one initiative that failed from the DeSantis administration earlier on last year, which was to commercialize state parks by allowing Jack Nicklaus designed golf courses and commercial businesses to take over those public properties and profit from them. The State Parks Protection Act, which was widely supported in the environmental community, SB 80, would prohibit those kinds of commercial businesses on all public-owned property. So quite an agenda, lots bad, a little bit good, but it's all up in the air about what passes in the next 60 days. There is some division among the majority in Tallahassee between there used to be a division between conservatives and moderates in the majority, and now there's a division between the DeSantis folks and the Trumpsters, and that can be sometimes exploited to stop the worst of the worst. So what we can do, we need to find out where you need to find out where your state legislators stand on these key issues, whichever ones are most important to you, and thank or spank them for their positions. Let them know that constituents are watching and caring. We were pleasantly surprised last year by how receptive legislators, conservatives and liberal, were to the feedback they were getting from constituents. And you can do that in a variety of ways. As Karen said, you can join us, join the Floridians for Democracy at a postcard party 2 Saturdays from now, Saturday, March 8th, from 2 to 4 p.m. It will be in the community room at the Fine Mark Bank, which is on College Parkway. It's at College and Summerlin, I believe, in Fort Myers. You can submit letters to the editor and op-eds. And I just want to remark on that. If you happen to one of the few people who still looks at newspapers, if you look at the letters to the editor page of the Naples News or the Fort Myers Free Press here in Southwest Florida, you will find that the letters page is dominated by progressive voices who are critical of what's going on in Tallahassee, to the extent that the few conservative letter writers wonder whether the socialists or communists have taken over the newspapers. And it's a positive feedback to our allies and a message to public officials when they see time after time letters and op-eds criticizing their behavior. I know Howard Simon, who's on this call, Bob Hilliard, who's on the call, have also published multiple op-eds, and it's very helpful to get the message out and very easy to do. We can help you do that to get the message about these bad bills. You can also, if you're on social media, post critiques of this legislation on social media. Most people have no idea what their legislators are doing. They think they're, good old boys who help deliver, fill the potholes and deliver some money from Tallahassee for community activities. And they don't know that they're proposing and advancing these very radical agenda. Letting more people know through your Facebook or X or Blue Sky or whatever you choose is a very good way to get the message out. And legislators pay attention to that. Especially effective is to bird dog legislators, to go to their public meetings at district town halls and local office hours and let them know what you're thinking. They don't hear our voices unless we speak to them, either directly or through the media. And I saw on the evening news here last night, Adam Botana, who is a conservative representative from Southwest Florida, getting beaten up at a local meeting around a local issue, and acted just surprised that so many people were unhappy with his position. You can also visit elected officials in Tallahassee. Floridians for Democracy is planning to send a group up during the session, and you can meet with legislators and their staff there and get a real world civics lesson, not the one from your textbooks, about how the sausage is made in legislation. And finally, for the long term, you can contribute to candidates and causes who support your views. Elections are around the clock activity. As people saw yesterday, there was already a candidate for governor who declared in Florida. The 2026 election cycle is already underway. You can choose which candidates to support with your time and money and voice, and ensure that that people who are opposed to the kinds of nonsense that's being promulgated in Tallahassee stand up, run strong campaigns, and maybe win a few to advance our agenda. I'm now going to take your questions. If you don't get a chance to raise them here tonight, You can reach me directly at the coordinates on your screen, or through Floridians for Democracy. Thanks for your time, and please join us in pressuring our public officials to stop the nonsense and meet the needs of Floridians, the real needs, not just the meat for the red meat for the base voters. Thank you.
Hey, Bob, can you stop sharing your screen?
Yep, I'm going to do that right here.
Okay, I have a few questions, and then we're going to open it up for people to ask questions by themselves by just raising their hand, which is one of the options on the bottom of your screen. So can you comment at all on what's happening in Gadsden County, where they are setting up roadblocks and arresting Latino citizens who can't present their papers?
I don't know the details of it. I've read the same stories. There's a lot of rumors that have not yet been confirmed, but the state, the governor, the state police, the Agriculture Commission are all in and trying to out-Trump Trump on beating up on immigrants. I recall that, DeSantis apparently illegally enticed people to take airplanes from Texas to Massachusetts. People would be rounded up to get immigrants, undocumented people, out of the state and to showboat for his national ambition. So it could well be happening, and it is. If it is, it's being done with the full strength of the state government behind it.
And you mentioned briefly about them trying to change the qualification percentage for constitutional amendments to 67.
They've already changed that from 50 to 60. There has been talk of raising it to 67%. That failed in the 2024 legislative session. I have not seen indications that they're going to try that again.
Okay.
Here, but they could. I mean,
Okay.
Again, everything's at risk when the legislature's in session. Things can be pasted on as amendments to the budget or other legislation that no one's heard about previously.
And also, this is, I guess, a statement from somebody that Howard Sapp is going to run for the House seat being vacated by Byron Donalds. Any thoughts about that?
I live in the district being vacated by Do Nothing Donald, and I think that's the only way we should ever refer to him. He has a track record of nothingness. The Do Nothing Donald's district is a very heavily red district in terms of voter registration. There will be a mass primary in the Republican side with many people running for office. It's hard to predict which politician will prevail. Donald's was nominated in a race after Francis Rooney stepped aside that had 9 candidates in it, and he won with a very small percentage of the vote. It is a very difficult race for a Democrat to win in Florida, but it's one where it's worth raising the voice to criticize what the Republican candidates are likely to advocate.
And do you know whether the real ID, in quotes, qualify as a citizenship document?
I don't know that. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an immigration lawyer in particular. I don't know. I have a Florida driver's license. I do not recall having to show any evidence of citizenship when I got my Florida driver's license 25 years ago. You just had to attest that you were a citizen and lived in the state, and that you had a residence in the state. And I believe that's still the case.
Yeah.
I mean, the change here was that you would have to show documents that many people, particularly low income and people who are very mobile, don't have in order to get a driver, to register to vote, or presumably to get a driver's license without an NC on it.
Do you have any insights on congressional districts 1 and 6. There's upcoming
Yeah.
elections there. Any thoughts?
Well, yes, I mean, there are special elections coming up on April Fool's Day in District 1, which was Matt Gaetz. And people should remember that was one modest victory for sanity that Matt Gaetz, who was President Trump's original choice to be Attorney General, had to step aside in disgrace and creating a gap. It's an extremely conservative district with many military bases and retired military live in it. District 1 is the westernmost district in the Panhandle, including Pensacola. It is even more conservative than Southwest Florida. The woman who is running as a Democratic nominee has done a good job of raising money and raising her voice. She's running against the chief financial officer of Florida, a very Jimmy Patronis, who was a popular restaurateur before he became an elected official and has lots of money and name recognition. Very tough haul. The District 6, which is to the east of Orlando, where the incumbent became the national security advisor, is a more competitive district, still Republican leaning. It's worth investing in. We don't want to get too much into the electoral realm, but there's the potential there for some change and for a good showing, a competitive showing.
So I think what we want to do, Bob, is to let's get out of focus mode here, and we'll let people raise their hand and ask you questions directly. In a minute, they'll be able to unmute themselves and ask you questions. So I'm taking you off of the spotlight. And if you raise your hand, you'll go to the front of the line, and Bob can answer your question after you ask it. So please raise your hand if you have a question.
Use the Zoom hand because we can't see everybody's face.
Yeah, so
You automatically go to the front of the line if you raise your hand. There's got to be some questions. Bob did such a great job.
Nancy raised her hand.
okay, Nancy, just unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, I just put in the chat that today Jenna Persons filed a bill to change the rules on constitutional amendments and petitioning. So that bill now that we have been afraid would happen has come. I read what I could, the summary that was online. It doesn't give the details. It only talks about all the new rules, all the new types of rules about who can collect, that organization can only collect for one issue. So, with our Amendment 4, there were professional ballot petition collectors, and they also were involved in the marijuana and some of the other, and this would stop that, I think. There's all kinds of rules about the time frame, about the review of ballots, et cetera. So we don't have the details, but again, an effort to, as you mentioned, Bob, it's happened. It's been filed. So
Okay. Did you happen to get the number, Nancy, so we can talk about it?
I did. Just a second.
1205, I think, is the number.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, as expected, there's still real bad stuff in the pipeline.
And next is Charlotte. Unmute yourself.
Hi, I don't necessarily have a question, but I'm wondering if politicians have been emphasized or encouraged to hold town hall meetings so that they can find out the tenor of the residents that are in their districts or in their regions.
They've certainly been encouraged to do that. Many of them choose not to because they don't want to give critics a forum.
Right.
And create media events where people can see that the point of view being advocated in Tallahassee is out of step with what constituents want. But it's a good demand. You know, we talked a little bit about Byron Donalds. When was the last time Byron Donalds did a town hall in CD 19? I believe never. It's a typical behavior of politicians to insulate themselves from constituents and public opinion and bad media, and they should be pressed to show up and defend their positions. Good point.
So Stephen,
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Steve.
Hi. I saw on Facebook a TikTok of a woman in a public hearing, a public meeting, who apparently was called upon, and she was voicing her opinion, and several security people came and took her out of the room forcefully. What's happening with free speech these days?
Well, I believe that incident happened. I think it was in Utah. I read about it, and I think they ended up apologizing for her, and it was a private security firm which was disciplined or fired for overreacting. I mean, we hamstring ourselves if we become fearful of the worst possible consequences. You know, many of us have spoken up at public meetings, not suffered any ill consequences. We should presume that democracy will prevail and press for it. And if we have allies at those meetings, it is less likely that repressive behaviors will be imposed. So I think that was an isolated incident. You've seen, in fact, if you watch, network TV news around the country during the recent House of Representatives recess that ended yesterday, a number of incumbent legislators found that their constituents were outraged by the behavior of President Musk and his sidekick, Donald Trump, and were shocked by how many people came out and criticized the behavior.
Thanks, Bob. Dr. Bachman is raising his hand. You won't go to the front of the screen, but we saw your hand up.
Thank you. I couldn't find where to do it on my subscript. My question is, where we live in the Sanibel area, and I'm sure this is true in lots of parts of Florida, undocumented workers do virtually all of the landscaping, roofing, carpentry, vegetable picking, and if they deport all of these people, we're going to have a major economic crisis. We've had 50 years without a rational immigration policy. I recall that under Ronald Reagan, there was a guest worker program that seemed to work pretty well, although it was criticized at the time. Are you hearing anything from the legislators about this? Because if they do kick all these people out, they're going to have a lot of very unhappy constituents.
Well, you'll notice that in the immigration crackdown that the legislature has previously supported, and in the bills that I talked about today, not a single one punishes employers who are hiring undocumented people, the big agribusiness companies and hospitality industries that are doing it. That is because the crackdown on immigrants is not a policy designed for anything else other than political gain. It is designed to show that they are tough and appeal to the right-wing base. It is, it's more huff and puff and show than reality, designed to make it look like they're doing something. You're certainly correct, Dr. Bachman, that were all undocumented people in Florida erased somehow, the economy would collapse. And I think that the people who run the legislature know that. So they want to make a show of cracking down on a few, not cracking down on where the real abuses occur. And those abuses occur because large businesses, sugar, agribusiness can make more money because they can pay undocumented workers less. And it keeps the economy rolling forward and the campaign contributions coming. So, but it's using people as pawns for political and ideological gain.
And Randy, you got a question?
Yes, I do. I have a question for Bob. On the national scale, one of the things that they are speaking about is the purpose of what they're doing is cruelty, that it is actually designed to be cruel. Would you reflect on some of these bills as the possibility, the motive is cruelty?
I think for some, the motive is cruelty, and macho expressionism. But I think for the most part, it's all politics, and people are acting in a way that they think advances their likelihood of obtaining and maintaining power. And they have seen in the most recent election, for example, that whooping on defenseless people appeals to an electoral majority, a narrow one, but one that's sufficient to keep them in power, and they'll do more of the same. And unless until they hear the message that no, people don't want that, and that there's a groundswell of public opinion through letters and postcards and town meetings and ultimately votes, they will not change. I have never found, and I've worked in politics for way too long, including 6 years in staffing in the legislature up north, that assessing what people's motivations are is not a productive way to move forward. You have to deal with their behavior and change the behavior. I mean, I don't care whether people stop for stoplights because they believe in the rule of law or because they're afraid of getting a ticket or they're afraid of getting hit. I just care that they stop for the stoplights. And I want people, legislators, to stop this nonsense for whatever reason.
So I'm looking to see if there's any more people waving their hands or want to put their Zoom hand up. While we have the advantage of Bob. Bill, you want to explain what you put in the chat for everyone?
That came from Bill, I think.
Yes. Bill, you're on mute.
That reposted that for Rosemary Niles. Rosemary Niles, are you there, Rosemary? Unmute yourself and explain that chart. Well, maybe she.
I'm trying.
Oh yeah, Rosemary, are you there?
Yes.
Special
Can-
Hi.
Hi, I have a cold, but I just wanted you to be aware of my Senator Blaise Ngolia posted on Facebook today that he has proposed Bill 1414. I don't think I heard us talking about
I
that.
deny that. That's a very late filed bill with that high number. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can just read what I put in the chat. It sounds a little bit like the SAVE Act. It's got a little bit of everything. Safeguard our elections and protect our Constitution. Over the years, we've seen people and organizations try and manipulate the system to their benefit. Florida should not stand for it. Here are some of the highlights. The bill prohibits any foreign national from funding political parties, candidates, or constitutional amendments, mandates that election results undergo a full audit of every vote cast prior to election.
That means hand counting all ballots, which is insane.
Yeah, to ensure accuracy, verifies citizenship for all voters, and implements additional.
Wait, just hang on. Does that mean they check your birth certificate at the polling booth?
That's what it sounds like to me. Well, it's at least for register. He didn't say, he says voters, but it sounds like the SAVE Act verifying citizenship. And maybe he's thinking ahead in case the SAVE Act doesn't pass. I don't know. To prevent illegal immigrants from voting in Florida elections. This is all based on I guess, a myth of voter fraud. Okay, he keeps going. Eliminates certain IDs for voting, such as debit, credit cards, student IDs, neighborhood association IDs. It adds election fraud and violations of election law to the list of charges applicable under racketeering statutes, eliminates third-party collection of petition forms, and replaces it with the same verification measures used in vote by mail required. So it sounds like that's constitutional amendment
Yeah,
petition.
no, that sounds like this going to the supervisor's office to sign a petition.
Yeah, right, which is what DeSantis wanted. He is a DeSantis very
Yep.
strong ally. And then requires proposed amendments by definition to define terms of art, such as healthcare provider. And he even has a little meme, which Bill put for everybody to see. So he likes to package it up real pretty. That's it.
Wow. Wow.
And more to come.
Thank you, Rosemary. And we have Liz. Liz, you can unmute yourself.
Hey, Liz.
Still muted.
All right.
Yeah.
Bob, you are very, very pragmatic. Every time I've heard you speak, you've encouraged us to put our efforts behind pragmatic efforts. Everything, Floridians for Democracy is like banging on the door of idealism. I stand for that. I encourage it. I foster it. We have these races, in Northern Florida for Congress, and you point out how red those districts are. I am loath to tell my people that I communicate with in Lower Lee County to say, yeah, they can't win. Put your energy out other ways. I don't know what your thoughts are on this right now, because I know you've encouraged us to put time and money where we could actually win.
I think there are, as I said, the last point on the to-dos is that there are candidates who can do well and places they can do well who need more support. And we can win local offices. I know here on Sanibel we can elect moderates to offices. You can also in places like Bonita Springs and in parts of Fort Myers and in Hillsborough County and Pinellas County and Palm Beach County. I don't feel that there is great value in investing in total lost causes. But there are some where just getting the voice out there and the issues raised is of value in hemming in how bad the behavior of a radical right-wing incumbent or newly elected person will be. These special elections for Congress due to people being appointed by Trump are very tough because they're going to be low turnout elections when mostly the party faithful vote, and those tend not to be good races for people from the outside to do well. I think it's a little bit of both, that you have to focus resources on places where we can win or make real progress for the future to build a bench of candidates who can run for future offices, and then raise issues in other places and hem in incumbents to mitigate how bad they are in places where we can't win.
And Nancy has her hands up. Nancy, you can unmute yourself.
Or-
Nancy, unmute yourself, Nancy.
Sorry, I thought I did. I just want to say that I felt the same way, that this was not going to be winnable. And I did hear Gay Valamont from CD1 speak at Carrie Lerner's. She was on a Zoom, and I was, I've seen her so many times on Facebook, but when I saw her sort of direct, I was so moved by her story and the loss of her husband, the loss of her child, about what she has lived through. And I just became really a big fan, number one. And Josh Wheel, again, I wasn't, a huge fan. But then I went on a Zoom the other night, and there were 1,700 people on that Zoom, and they had another 4,000 or something on Facebook. And it was a countrywide Zoom to support our candidates. And Josh Wheel has raised over $4 million.
He's done a very good job.
I don't know how much she's raised, but people all over the country are making phone calls. They're sending postcards. They're even coming to Florida to knock doors. They've knocked something like 13,000 doors in one weekend. I mean, it's just amazing, the momentum. And I think as Floridians, we shouldn't give up on them. I'm now convinced that we need to push the needle on this one. Maybe we can't win it, but maybe it'll help start to change minds. And I think we have to give it all we've got. I mean, this is the only way that we can quickly change what's happening in Washington, if by some miracle we could win the 2 seats in Florida and the 1 in New York. So my argument is, let's put effort into it. I wouldn't say let's put all our all our energy into these, but I really think it's worth it. And there were people on that call from Sarasota who said, I'm going to knock doors, I'm coming. There were people from around Florida who were galvanizing their energy to go there. So that's my argument. Thanks.
Good
Thank you,
argument.
Thank you, Nancy. Ellen, you're unmute yourself. There you go.
Is there any Florida-specific app, such as 5 Calls, which is available now for national issues?
Not that I am aware of. A number of organizations will put out alerts during the legislative session that allow you to quickly write or call legislators. For example, Progress Florida, on whose board I sit, has a letter that you can generate online from progressflorida.org about the attempts to restrict constitutional amendments. But I'm not aware of a generic one like 5 Calls.
I know the League of Women Voters does as well,
Yes.
have an action emails that come out. Okay, thank you.
And Planned Parenthood does, and Equality Florida does.
Right.
And
right.
the groups I consulted to get this list, the Florida Immigrant Coalition, they're great groups out there, but there is no coordinated, progressive consensus agenda effort that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
If folks haven't seen that, what Ellen talked about on the national level, it is amazingly easy to navigate. Was it 5calls.org? Is that?
Yep.
That the five calls, the number 5calls.org. Great. And once you've registered in it, it takes you right to your delegation on a national basis, and it gives you the talking points for any of the issues you might be interested in. It's a great question, Ellen. We've had this conversation. We haven't been able to see that level. There are certainly organizations that give you the opportunity to try to, the Votes organization, and there's a couple of others that do a good job, but it's just not there yet. Any other questions for the evening? We'd like to thank Bob for his time, and we recorded the presentation this evening. It will be on the Floridians for Democracy YouTube channel. You can find it by just putting in those words, Floridians for Democracy YouTube, and it'll take you right to it. It takes us a couple of days to get that downloaded and posted, but we'll do that as quickly as we can. We want to reinforce that while Bob mentioned about the program on March the 8th in Fort Myers, postcarding, we want to encourage anybody in any community. We have people from all over the state to host in their homes, host in a community center, wherever you might be, a receptive church, whatever you can do. And have fun with it. If you happen to tie it into 2 to 4 p.m. on March the 8th, that Saturday afternoon, we'd love to know about it, and we can link together so that that we can say, well, Jacksonville just got to 100 cards or whatever, and have some fun with it.
And they can ask Bob.
But and Bob will be there with us, and so he can go right on the Zoom.
And Nancy, the queen of postcarding, will be there.
No, she can't
She
be.
knows how to do it.
Oh, she can't be with us that day. She's got a conflict with
Yeah.
one of her many other organizations.
Sorry.
Also have on March the 12th will be our next evening educational program, and that is we're hosting that with the Florida Immigrant Coalition and their various 60 different partner organizations. And Tessa Pettit, who's their lead executive director, is putting that together. We don't have a Zoom link for it yet, but hopefully this week we will have that, and we'll get that communication out to everybody. But that'll be an important program. We've asked them to share deportation facts versus fiction, and we know that every day the facts as well as the fictions change. And whatever it happens to be that day, we want to do. And yeah,
Jim, I see that Sherry Arnaz has a question.
Yeah, I wasn't going to leave her out. I just trying to finish myself. So those are the upcoming programs. So Sherry.
Hi, I'm Sherry from Naples. I'm interested in the postcarding. We've done it a lot through Unitarian Universalist where we attend. How can I get postcards?
Just tell us how many you want and send us your address, and I can get them in the mail by a Friday morning, because we'll be going out of town. So I need to know by tomorrow.
And how do I get to you?
Just go to info@floridiansfordemocracy.org, info@floridiansfordemocracy, one word.org. And we'll get that and get your address and how many cards you want, and we'll get them sent to you on Friday.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And anybody else, the same deal. Dale.
Hey, I just went on ChatGPT and asked if 5 calls could be programmed for the use of on a state legislative messaging, and it says it can be programmed to do that. So maybe that's something we should investigate further.
Great idea, Dale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will do that. Great. All right, anybody else for the good of the cause? Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Bob, thanks for all your time and effort and preparing for this. The challenge then is we cannot be silent. We can't give up. These are daunting, rapidly changing times. It's easy to just say, this is moving too fast. But if it isn't us, then who else is it going to be? Most of us are doing this for our grandchildren and future generations. We've got to at least try our very best, because we certainly have formidable foe that's well-financed with common language and constant attack and not even close to the truth. But we'll keep plugging. We're honored to have you on this journey with us. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Program's been recorded. You'll get information about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob, thank you so much. I'm going to turn the recording off.